in the valley.
Korea is surrounded by the sea on three sides. From the beach, you can enjoy a wide open view as well as various water activities. But the riverside is great too. There's plenty to see and do.
If you're in Korea, you can't miss the night view full of dazzling lights.
Yes, even the same place can have a totally different vibe at night.
Want to make unforgettable memories?
How about traveling to all corners of Korea? Join us next time to explore more about Korean culture.
Held its first debate over the weekend.
The economy is expected to expand 2.5% this year.
Boosting Korea's ties with its global partners on the sidelines of the latest UN summit.
A massive drone attack on Ukraine overnight on Monday and Tuesday.
Arirang.
President Lee Jae-myung is set to travel to Singapore and the Philippines for a 4-day state visit starting Sunday. He's expected to discuss AI and nuclear energy cooperation with his Singaporean counterparts before heading to the Philippines, where he will likely hold talks on cooperation in critical minerals, shipbuilding, and nuclear energy. The White House says U.S. President Donald Trump remains open to dialogue with North Korea without any preconditions. This comes after North Korean leader Kim Jong-un said Pyongyang would have no reason not to get along well with the U.S. if Washington withdraws its hostile policy. U.S. and Iran have wrapped up nuclear talks in Geneva, their third round of indirect negotiations, as the risk of war looms. But there was no announcement of a deal, and attention is now turning to the technical level discussions that will likely take place next week in Vienna. Hello and thanks for joining us on Arirang News. President Lee Jae-myung is set to embark on a 4-day trip to Southeast Asia for summit diplomacy, starting Sunday. He will meet the leaders of Singapore and the Philippines to bolster cooperation on artificial intelligence and nuclear energy. Our Yoon Jang-min reports.
The South Korean president will embark on a state visit to Singapore from March 1st to March 3rd. President Lee Jae-myung will meet Singaporean Prime Minister Lawrence Wong for a summit and lunch, as well as President Tharman Shanmugaratnam for a state dinner on Monday. An AI dialogue with industry leaders is also scheduled. In a written briefing on Friday, Blue House spokesperson Kang Yoo-jung said Korea looks forward to working closely with Singapore, seen as a logistics and financial hub, for cooperation on trade, investment, and infrastructure, as well as AI and nuclear energy. Yi and Wang met last November on the margins of the APEC leaders meeting in Korea and forged a strategic partnership.
앞으로 양국은 전략적 동반자 관계에 기초하여 변화하는 경제와 안보 환경에 대처하는 한편 전략 첨단 기술 협력을 더욱 강화하고 인적 교류도 확대하기로 뜻을 모았습니다.
On March 3rd, President Yi flies to Manila for a 2-day state visit. He will meet Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. for talks, a state dinner, and a business forum. The leaders will explore ways to deepen cooperation on the defense industry, infrastructure, and trade, as well as build partnerships in nuclear energy, shipbuilding, critical minerals, and AI. The Blue House spokesperson noted that the summit takes place on Tuesday as the two countries celebrate the 77th anniversary of the establishment of their diplomatic relations. The Philippines is the first country in Southeast Asia to build diplomatic ties with Korea and has been a friendly country for decades dating back to the Korean War. The Philippines and Singapore are set to host ASEAN-related summits this year and next year, respectively. During the Korean ASEAN summit in Malaysia last October, Yi unveiled his ASEAN policy called the CSP Vision, or Contributor, Springboard, and Partner Vision, that puts cooperation on the economy and security front and center. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Following North Korea's 9th Workers' Party Congress, the United States says it's open to dialogue with the North without any preconditions. And China also reiterated the cooperation between the two Koreas. Kim Do-yeon reports.
The White House confirmed Thursday that U.S. President Donald Trump remains open to dialogue with North Korea without any preconditions, signaling a potential opening for renewed diplomacy. This follows North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's address at the 9th Workers' Party Congress, where he said that Pyongyang has no reason not to get along with the United States if Washington withdraws its hostile policy and respects North Korea's current status as a nuclear power. He emphasized that the prospect of bilateral ties depends entirely on the attitude of the United States, although he noted Pyongyang will maintain a hardline stance as its baseline policy. A White House official responded by confirming that U.S. policy on North Korea remains unchanged. The official highlighted the stabilization of the Korean Peninsula achieved during President Trump's first term, referencing their 3 summits in Singapore in June 2018, Hanoi in February 2019, and Panmunjom in June 2019. Meanwhile, South Korea's chief nuclear envoy Chung Hyun-doo confirmed in Washington on Thursday local time that while the U.S. maintains an open stance, including the no preconditions aspect, there is currently no active working level contact between Washington and Pyongyang. Chung added that Seoul will continue its role as a facilitator to support a resumption of bilateral talks. While Kim left the door open for Washington, he strongly rejected any engagement with Seoul. He labeled South Korea as the most hostile entity and stated he will permanently exclude the South from the category of compatriots. Also addressing Pyongyang's Party Congress on Thursday, the Chinese Foreign Ministry reiterated a call for cooperation. Spokesperson Mao Ning stated that China, as a close neighbor, is closely monitoring developments on the peninsula. She urged all parties to work together to safeguard peace, stability, and the political resolution process. These shifting dynamics arrive amid growing speculation that President Trump could seek to resume direct talks with Kim during his anticipated visit to China, which is scheduled from late March to early April. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Officials from the United States and Iran met in Geneva for nuclear talks. But the meeting, their third round of indirect negotiations, ended with no announcement of a deal. Key differences still remain as Washington warns Tehran must not be allowed to develop a nuclear weapon. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
U.S. and Iranian officials say they have made significant progress during high-stakes nuclear talks in Geneva, though it remains unclear whether a final deal can be reached to avert a potential conflict. Omani Foreign Minister Badr al-Busaidi, who mediated the negotiations, said the two sides agreed to resume talks soon after consultations in their respective capitals. He added that technical-level discussions are set to take place next week in Vienna. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, who led Tehran's delegation, described the discussions as serious and productive. He said there was agreement on some issues, but differences remain.
On some issues, we have now become very close to an understanding. On certain other issues, we still have differences of opinion.
Arakshi stressed that Iran's key demand is the lifting of U.S. sanctions, a step Washington has long said would require major concessions from Tehran. There was no immediate comment from the U.S. negotiating team following the meeting. Meanwhile, tensions persist. Iran has rejected U.S. claims that it has resumed efforts related to nuclear weapons development. However, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance said there is evidence suggesting Iran has attempted to rebuild its nuclear weapons program. Speaking to reporters at the White House on Thursday, Vance warned that any move by Iran to pursue nuclear weapons would pose a serious problem for the United States. He reiterated that the U.S. position remains clear. Iran must not be allowed to obtain a nuclear weapon. For now, another round of nuclear talks between Washington and Tehran is scheduled for next week in Vienna. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
South Korea is broadening its diplomacy on an interpersonal level, targeting countries traditionally considered out of its strategic range. That's according to Seoul's top official on public diplomacy, who spoke to our Oh Soo-young on his approach.
Inspiring hope, solidarity, and even a bit of dance, Korea plans to expand its reach to the global south. Korea's new Deputy Minister for Public Diplomacy, Im Sang-woo, brings decades of experience to the role of broadening Seoul's diplomacy beyond traditional statecraft centered on trade and security.
I think in this era of uncertainty with a lot of changes and vagaries, public diplomacy has really become one of the most important tools of diplomacy. It's become one of the most important diplomatic strategies that nations can adopt, especially for nations, middle powers like Korea. Global South is the focus.
His tenure as Korea's first ambassador to Madagascar offers a glimpse of his approach. Learning Malagasy on the ground, Im's engagement with communities went beyond the vernacular. He also drew in individuals and NGOs, helping strengthen healthcare networks, youth education and food security, as well as biodiversity protection and free elections. Im became a widely loved and respected figure, even invited to create his own TV show on Korean culture. Im's people-centered approach also resonated in India, his most recent post. He drew public attention, not only by impressively speaking Hindi. He also volunteered every weekend as a certified guide at the National Museum.
And I say, hi, I'm your tour guide for you today. Actually, I'm from Korea, and they're a little taken aback, but I sprinkle my tour guide with Korean history, where Korean history overlaps with Indian history, and Buddhism too, and it came from India. So after my 1 hour and a half of guide through the National Museum, the Indians, they come to appreciate not only their own history, but also the fact that Korea and India were very close, interconnected, despite the distance.
Further expanding Korea's reach online, Im and his Korean embassy colleagues bust out dance moves to the song Natu Natu. This drew widespread reactions across the world's largest democracy, including from Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who shared and commented on the post. Now overseeing Seoul's public diplomacy, Im hopes to build on the Korean narrative of development that resonates with emerging partners and younger societies.
As we went through all this in a very compressed timeline, we experienced war, poverty, and then modernization, democratization. So all these things happened in such a short period of time, so we have such a huge reservoir of raw material to be used for our stories and our music. And I think people across different backgrounds, they see their story, they see their struggles in our storylines.
Now 3 decades into his career, Im hopes to continue reaching people's hearts to build shared aspiration and solidarity. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
E-commerce giant Coupang reported annual revenue of $34.53 billion in 2025. showing continued growth but saw operating profits plummet in the fourth quarter last year due to the data breach incident. Annual operating income rose 8% to $473 million, while net income totaled $214 million. Fourth quarter revenue reached $8.84 billion, up 11% on year, but down from the previous quarter. However, fourth quarter operating profits fell sharply to $8 million, down 97% from $312 million a year earlier. South Korean hit historical film The King's Warden is bringing renewed attention to one of Korea's most tragic royal stories. Visitors are now traveling to Yeongwol, where the young King Danjong spent his final days in exile. Our Chung Hae-rim was there.
Dozens of people line up at the Cheongryongpo dock in Yeongwol, Gangwon-do province. Once the inescapable exile grounds for King Danjong, who was banished by his own uncle at just 16 years old, it is now a bustling tourist hotspot. Driven by the hit film The King's Warden, visitor numbers here have surged more than fivefold compared to last year. Surrounded by the Seogang River and steep cliffs, the only access is by boat. Visitors can ride a boat into Cheongryongpo, tracing the exiled king's path across the water. And as you can see behind me, the once lonely journey is now bustling with people. Upon stepping off the boat, visitors are greeted by a dense pine forest. Further inside, they explore the stone monument which marks the original site of the king's exile and his reconstructed royal residence. Tourists walk around curiously, taking the site's solemn atmosphere.
I watched the movie The King's Warden, and since we had already planned a trip to Yeongwol to visit the observatory, I thought we definitely had to come here too.
Among the site's landmarks is the Gwanumsong pine tree and Manghyangtap, a stone tower he built while longing for home. Many visitors say the film has given deeper meaning to what they see.
At first, I was just admiring the scenery because the water was so clear. But then I remembered the movie scene where the raft breaks apart in the water. It made me realize just how miserable he must have felt.
Tourists are also visiting Jangneung, the royal tomb where King Danjong was eventually laid to rest. Around the burial area, which is said to be significantly smaller and further from the capital than the tombs of other Joseon kings, visitors can be seen taking photos, carefully reading the information boards, and quietly paying their respects.
Coming to Jangneung and thinking about the harsh life and struggles King Danjong endured breaks my heart. I hope this tragic story is passed down to future generations.
People also stop by the commemorative pavilion honoring Omungdo, the loyal villager who, according to legend, recovered and buried the king's body. Less than a month since its release, The King's Warden is already nearing 7 million viewers. The film is drawing visitors to historic sites tied to the young king, reflecting the Korean public's continued effort to remember and honor their past. Chung Hae-rim, Arirang News, Yeongwol.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. In the U.S., former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton testified under oath and flatly denied any knowledge of Jeffrey Epstein's criminal network. Hillary Clinton on Thursday told a House committee in a closed-door deposition in New York that she never encountered Jeffrey Epstein's crimes and has no memory of meeting the late financier. This was her first formal testimony regarding her alleged ties to Epstein. The committee scheduled former President Bill Clinton to testify on Friday, marking the first time a former U.S. president has been compelled to appear before Congress. Also on Thursday, World Economic Forum President Birga Brenda announced his immediate resignation from the global organization. The WEF confirmed Brenda's departure following an internal review into his relationship with Epstein. The White House announced on Wednesday that First Lady Melania Trump will chair a United Nations Security Council meeting on Monday, as the United States assumes the body's rotating monthly presidency. Her office said she will address a session titled Children, Technology, and Education in Conflict and will emphasize education as a path towards tolerance and global peace. A United Nations spokesperson said no spouse of a serving world leader has ever chaired a meeting of the 15-member Security Council. The European Commission told member states on Thursday that they may use the €147 billion European Social Fund Plus to help provide access to safe abortion care, including for women traveling from EU countries where access to abortions is restricted. The Commission issued the clarification after the My Voice, My Choice campaign gathered more than 1 million signatures, triggering a formal response under EU rules. Critics in countries including Malta and Poland said the move interferes with national health policy. Paris on Thursday awarded its 2026 Grand Prix de la Baguette after judges evaluated 143 loaves in the city's annual competition. Judges scored each baguette on appearance, baking quality, smell, taste, and crumb structure. The contest awards €4,000 in prize money, and the winner traditionally supplies baguettes to the French president's office. This year's title went to Setam Parapillai, the gatipan of Fournil-Didot in Paris's 14th arrondissement. Chu Ji-han, Arirang News.
It's been raining in the southern parts of Korea since early this morning. Jeju could get up to 10 millimeters of rainfall, while the other regions might get 5 millimeters or less. But the mountainous areas of Gangwon-do province could get 1 centimeter of snowfall. The rain will taper off in most parts by the early afternoon. Then additional rain is in the forecast for the Independence Day holiday weekend. Rain or snow will begin in the east of Gangwon-do province tomorrow night. Then starting on Jeju on Sunday, wet weather is expected nationwide on Monday, which is a substitute holiday. Today, the capital region stays rain-free under sunny skies, but with dry weather alerts still being in place. Seoul gets up to 15 degrees under sunny skies, but Daegu will only get up to 11 degrees Celsius. Next week will not be as warm as this week, but we will welcome more spring conditions under bright skies.
That's all we have for today's noon edition of Arirang News. Thank you for watching. We'll be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Stay tuned.
To set the facts straight. Get Korea right.
한반도에서 가장 먼저 아침이 시작되는 곳. 대한민국 최동단에 위치한 섬. 천연기념물 제336호로 지정된 자연유산. 이곳은 경상북도 울릉군 울릉읍 독도입니다.